and very good to see everyone. And we have Patrick at the wheel of the tech this morning at Adhisthana, so that's good. And we're going to start with some meditation. Yeah, it's funny, our net's a bit slow, which means everybody is frozen, which means everybody seems to be kind of looking at me sort of attentively, but impassively. Oh, good, there's a bit of movement. All right, so we'll meditate. So to start with, just sitting open to our experience, whatever sounds there are, whatever's happening in body and mind. Now allowing or imagining awareness and energy going down to the ground. Feeling the warmth and pressure of our connection. And then feeling or imagining awareness and energy going down into the earth itself. And if it feels right to us, we could breathe in qualities, the energy of the earth. Breathe them up into the body, up into that area below the navel. From that solid foundation, letting the upper body open, a sense of the dignity of being a follower of the Buddha. Now letting the body be a field of kindly awareness. Now gathering awareness in our heart center. And inviting, invoking all the qualities of awakening to appear in our heart in the form of the refuge, however that is for us. And to strengthen that even more, invoking all the Adhisthana, all the bodhicitta of practitioners down from the Buddha, whatever sources of great love, great compassion, great wisdom there are. Now the energy of the refuge in our heart begins to work. With each in-breath, whatever sufferings, whatever causes of suffering, whatever confusions, whatever kleshas there are, taken into the refuge in our heart. Dissolved in great love and wisdom. And with the out-breath, we're filled with qualities filled with love and compassion, filled with joy, filled with ease. Really feeling or imagining the process working. How is it to feel really free? How is it to feel great love? And this process is naturally expansive. So now it widens out to include everyone in our retreat community. All of us meditating together. Anyone who watches this recording. Taking away suffering and the causes of suffering. Giving whatever's needed. Whatever's truly helpful. Sharing all the qualities of awakening. Now the process goes even further, widens out wherever it's needed, particular people, particular situations, or just out in all directions. Let's see if we can stay in touch with the sense of us all practicing together. Our combined energy that we're all sending from our hearts. We're all joining together to take away suffering. Again, really seeing, feeling the process having an impact, really having an effect. Now letting go. Nothing to do. Lastly, transferring the merits to all beings in all realms. Okay, so just while you're getting settled, let's remind ourselves where we are. So we've looked at the first section, training in the preliminaries, and the second section, we've looked at the first piece of advice of the ultimate bodhicitta, think of things as dreamlike. And we've had a little look at all the relative bodhicitta advice. So in the last session yesterday, we looked at 8 and 9, ending up with in all activities, train with sayings. So this morning, we're going to go on to section 3, transforming bad circumstances into the way of awakening. So this is advice on dealing with difficulties and how to practice in difficult situations. And on this retreat, we'll probably do the first 3 of these, so 11, 12, and 13. We'll see how it goes. So let's look at 11, which is, when the world is filled with negativity, transform all adverse conditions into the path of awakening. When the world is filled with negativity, transform all adverse conditions, all unhelpful conditions, and difficult conditions into the path of awakening. And this, in a way, is an introduction to the rest of the advice in this section, which is all about how to do that. So, well, the world is very often filled with negativity. Yeah, looking around at the state of the world at the moment, it's easy to think that it's, yeah, that's how it is. Bante in a talk once talked about how, sort of, if you look back at history, fundamentally it's the history of craving, aversion, and delusion. So being played out in different ways down through the centuries. And yeah, certainly at the moment, there are all kinds of adverse conditions, just difficult conditions with pandemic and growing impact of climate change and political tensions and struggle on the world stage, economic, political, etc. And then there are all kinds of adverse conditions to practicing the Dharma, just in terms of the views that are around us, what we're being presented with, yeah, by the media, the way that a lot of the views that are around in society and culture. Yeah, there's an awful lot that's based on ego clinging. So this advice is taking us into that territory and saying, transform all adverse conditions into the path of awakening. So we saw in session 4 yesterday how we can start from a negative emotion and we can train ourselves to use that to produce a very skillful response in ourselves. So that applies here. But in a way, this session is more about a spirit in the mind training of more and more turning towards and eventually going to look for and hunt out difficulties in ourselves, and also increasingly being prepared to put ourselves in difficult situations out there in the world. So obviously we have to be aware of what we're capable of at our current stage of development, and we need to be aware that external conditions have a big effect on us. And yes, we can, out of naive idealism and not knowing ourselves very well, we can put ourselves in situations which are just beyond us, and that where the forces of Mara, to call it that, are stronger than us. So we don't want to be doing that, but at the same time, we want to be cultivating a momentum in our practice, which increasingly allows us to turn towards difficulties, to go into difficult areas, to take on difficult situations, rather than avoiding and avoiding and avoiding. So yes, we talk about going into retreat, and we need to do that to give ourselves good conditions and to be able to deepen our practice. But with Mara in general, there comes a point where when we're solidly in touch with our practice, we want to be advancing. We want to be advancing and taking away Mara's territory rather than, us having to go and hide out somewhere to strengthen ourselves. You see what I mean? It's that process of gaining territory for the Dharma in that way. And the more you practice the mind training, the more there's that sense of the refuge that's doing the practice, the greater the sort of strength and confidence that starts to be there. And the more strength and confidence, the more you can go into difficult areas in yourself, the more you can take on difficult situations with other people. Geshe Sharawa, who compiled this 7-point mind training, after he'd trained, Geshe Chekawa, after he trained with Geshe Sharawa, he spent a long time living with lepers, and he just lived with them and ate with them, and for quite a period of time, this mind training was known as the practice for lepers. So he really took on a very difficult situation. So whilst being realistic about our own limits, we do want increasingly to be extending the practice and going to meet difficult areas in ourselves and difficult situations. Funnily enough, it's said that people who practice mind training often don't encounter that many difficulties in life. And I think there's something about that willingness to go and meet something which has an effect. It's often the avoidance, it's often the resistance. It's the aversion that makes a difficulty a difficulty. If we're really prepared to open to something, if we're really prepared to meet it, then the difficulty often diminishes or vanishes. And find that with other people. You think, oh, there's so-and-so, and they're so difficult and I don't want to meet them. And then we manage to turn that attitude around. Perhaps we practice metta for them for a while, and we manage to meet them with an open heart. And funnily enough, they're not so difficult. And yeah, there are usually areas of our lives where we're avoiding, and we kind of know we are. If our finances are in a mess and we don't feel we're very good with money, we may just keep putting off, looking into them or sorting them out. And there's that sense of them sort of sitting there, and the more you leave it, the more it becomes a problem and an issue somehow, which you can't sort of face. And then finally, perhaps a friend discovers that you're doing this, and they say, well, let's just go and see what needs doing. And just in the going and seeing what needs doing, just the going and meeting it, you may still have financial issues that you have to work out, but somehow all that energy that goes into the resistance, all that energy of knowing that it's there but not wanting to look at it, all that avoidance, all that comes out of the situation. That energy then becomes available to you to act. So the spirit of the mind training is very much one of kind of looking for where the energy is locked up, looking for where the energy is caught, and going and bringing that into the practice, bringing what's difficult into the practice, with that sense that with the connection with the refuge, with bodhicitta, with the methods of giving and receiving, yeah, there's always a way of practice. Whatever the situation is, there's always a way of practicing with it. Once we really start to get that sense, then as we gain confidence in that, then we start to be able to take on things which previously we would have found difficult. So that's true in the outside world, and it's also true in meditation. And we sort of go looking for where's the energy caught up. In a way you can practice just by completely relaxing and letting go in meditation, and just noticing where there's the holding. Just releasing that, relaxing. You can go into you can go very deep just practicing like that. And just doing this, there's a sort of there's a joy in that. There's a sort of joy and a freedom, yeah, in that lack of avoidance, yeah, in that just being prepared to meet what's there, yes, yeah, going to meet what's there. There's a certain kind of confidence and of a Dharma practitioner, a follower of the Buddha, doing that, just like, yeah, people would go to cremation grounds in that kind of difficult situation. We'll talk later in the mind training advice about, yeah, how much you take on and how you go about this. But it's getting a sense of that spirit, a sense of that spirit of, yeah, let's go and meet the difficulty. Yeah. It's the resistance, it's the avoidance that's the difficulty, really. And so that's where these wishes come in. I mentioned yesterday that wish, and whatever is for the best, may it happen. Yeah, that's kind of a good example. It's not saying, you know, whatever's going to be the easiest, whatever's going to be the nicest, whatever I'm going to like most, you know, may that happen, and may nothing nasty happen, please. Yeah. It's whatever is for the best, may it happen. And that whatever is for the best isn't just the best for us. Yeah. It's whatever's for the best overall. Yeah. Whatever's really for the best for the whole situation, yeah, for the whole world. May that happen. Yeah. So it's sort of taking a stand on something that's bigger than our ego clinging and its preferences and likes and dislikes. Yeah. It's taking a completely different position, which cuts through a lot of suffering, a lot of hopes and fears. Similarly, yeah, you can it's like there's a traditional version of that with illness, which maybe is really good at the moment with COVID, where there's so much kind of concern, you know, am I going to get the virus? Which is, if it's better for me to be ill, may I be ill. If it's better for me to be healthy, may I be healthy. And then even, if it's better for me to die, may I die. If you get to the point where you can sort of really stand in that position, there's a lot of freedom there. There's a lot of freedom from anxiety. There's a lot of freedom from concern and worry. Yeah. If it's better for me to be ill, may I be ill. If it's better for me to be healthy, may I be healthy. And it's a sort of a blasphemy against that sort of very narrow-minded, you know, what about me? Am I all right? Will I always be all right? Please. That whole kind of attitude gets sort of opened out and taken apart, and a lot more energy and freedom comes in. So we can't force this on ourselves, but we can get a taste for it, and we can train and develop and allow that to really grow. Yeah. And just notice how that feels compared to that sort of closing in around, you know, am I all right? Will I definitely be all right? That sort of attitude, we can feel the suffering in that. So then when we really feel the suffering in one and the freedom in the other, then we will start to move more and more in the direction of the freedom, sort of naturally. Yeah. So you get the idea. We're not imposing it on ourselves. We're not just giving it to ourselves as another thing that we have to do, you know, so that we feel good about ourselves as Dharma practitioners. You know, we're actually finding the freedom. Okay, so maybe that's enough as a sort of short introduction to this third section. So should we have a break? So 15 minutes from now, so that's about 12 minutes past the hour. Okay, see you soon. So we got some of you back. Oh, did your Katie's gained a friend? Still a few empty rooms though. Just give it another minute. Oh, that's pretty good.
Oh, Vessantara, the dog's name is Bodhi, by the way.
Okay, let's carry on. So before the break, I was talking about when the world is filled with negativity, transform all adverse conditions into the path of awakening. And was talking about the spirit of the mind training, which is to turn towards difficulties, to not tie up energy in avoidance. And I was mentioning those wishes, like, yeah, if it's better for me to be sick, may I be sick. If it's better for me to be healthy, may I be healthy. So we're going to go on. Although we're still missing quite a few people. We'll go on to number 12, which is a sort of relative, a practice of transforming bad circumstances using the sort of relative level approach. The advice in this section, some of it is more on the ultimate level, like regarding confusion as the four kayas, emptiness is the unsurpassed protection, that's more ultimate. But here we're on the relative level. So blame everything on one culprit. Well, we know who that culprit is, isn't it? It's them. Yeah.
Boris Johnson, isn't it?
Yeah, insert your insert name here, whichever ones you like. So what's this one all about? It's about finally, what is the cause of suffering? So from a Buddhist point of view, and from the real point of view, the final cause of suffering is self-clinging. Yeah? But we need to unpack all this a bit. Yeah, in a way, if this particular piece of advice is almost it's kind of the core of the mind training from a certain point of view, along with all the wisdom and the expansion of and love of bodhicitta. Yeah, blame everything on one culprit. The way it's put can send you off in unhelpful directions, though. It's not saying I'm to blame for everything. It's not saying, yes, you know, everything's my fault. It's not feeding into our tendencies to low self-esteem or anything like that. I've got this image of a Gary Trudeau cartoon where there's a man lying in the middle of the road, and the caption is something like, burdened with low self-esteem, Jim takes a job as a speed hump. Yeah, one of those things where you kind of slow the traffic down. Yeah, it's really not taking us anywhere near there. Yeah, it's not about that. but when we come down to it, when we look at things, so let's take the current situation. Okay, you have somebody who's in lockdown and they're finding it difficult. Maybe they're living by themselves in an apartment or flat somewhere, and in this culture, there's a very strong emphasis on finding, you know, the person to blame about things when they happen. So this person has a choice. They can look at, with COVID, they can think, well, you know, somehow somebody did something which enabled the virus to move from animals to humans. And they may think, well, the Chinese authorities were really slow in kind of passing the word on. And then my government were, you know, perhaps very slow in responding. Yeah, they imposed the lockdown far too late, or they imposed it too early so that I'm suffering here by myself and I can't work, or whatever it is. You can have a long list of all the people who are to blame. Yeah? So let's suppose that this person in their apartment, as they're thinking this, their doorbell goes, and they go to the door, and there's an Indian guy standing there, sort of beaming at them, and they say, "Hello, yes, can I help you?" And this Indian person says, "Well, I'm the Buddha, and in my meditation, I kind of got this sense that you were really suffering, so I thought I'd come and see what was going on." So you invite them in, sort of socially distanced, and the Buddha asks you to explain, you know, what the cause of your suffering is, and you explain, you know, all that's happening, and here you are stuck by yourself in this place, and you know, looking out the window, you know, you can just see the building opposite, and you've been here by yourself for so long, and yeah, you've had nothing but your mobile phone and Netflix for company, and so of course, you know, you're really suffering. So the Buddha might say, well, okay, let me use my psychic powers. You know, let's. Oh, and you're suffering physically as well. Yes, you've got all this physical tension. Okay, so what we'll do is, I'll swap bodies with you. Yeah. So we'll swap bodies, and I'll put you to sleep for a day, and I'll experience a day of what you're experiencing, so I can really empathize with the suffering. Yeah? So next thing you know, you're asleep. And eventually you wake up after what seems like a very, very long, very satisfying sleep. And there's a bowl of breakfast there for you. And you look around your apartment, and there's your shrine over there. And sitting on your meditation cushion is your body. But it doesn't really quite look like your body. It's like the shoulders seem like about 3 inches lower than they usually are. And the back is sort of beautifully straight. Not completely straight, because it hasn't been straight for years and years and years, but it's much straighter than it's been any time recently. And the whole flat is just permeated with this really lovely kind of quality. It just feels really still and deep, and it's just beautiful to be in. So the Buddha in your body sort of comes out of meditation, and he's had the most wonderful time the last 24 hours. Nobody's disturbed him. He's been completely happy, just sitting there. And yes, you know, he reports back, yes, this body does have a few aches and pains. Yeah, that's true. There was some discomfort. But I couldn't find the suffering. So taking this really silly example, the point that it makes is that the suffering is all being generated finally by how we're using our minds. Yeah. And you can say, well, it's all right for the Buddha, he's awakened and I'm not. Well, the answer is let's become more like him finally. Yeah. It just sort of brings home to us, or brings home to me when I use it as a thought experiment. Yeah. How somehow, although I feel like, well, the real issue is, you know, it's so-and-so's done this, or so-and-so hasn't done that, or I was badly treated, or whatever. Fundamentally, it's how I'm using my mind, if I can talk about it like that. That's the real issue. Yeah. And that's, I mean, it feels, again, it's not denying that conditions make a difference. It's not saying that if somebody treats me badly, I may stand up to them and I may make a complaint, or I may, I'll still interact with the outside world. But what I can really finally influence, and what is a decisive condition, is my own mind and how I'm using it. And the reason why I'm really suffering is because I've lost track of how things are. And I have this sense of a me that's somehow standing behind my experience, or in the center of my experience, that needs to be protected, cared for, is constantly checking to see that it's all right. Will it get what it wants? No, it doesn't want that. Let's hope it doesn't get that. On and on and on, 24 hours a day, just continuous. Yeah. And that is the real issue. And when I sort that issue out, yeah, when I take even some steps to sort that issue out, suddenly there's less suffering, even if the situation hasn't changed. Yeah. So I don't know, yeah, traditionally this is put in terms of blame everything on one culprit. So the culprit is ego clinging. Maybe we don't even need to talk about blame really. But it's maybe if I wanted to rephrase this so that we don't take ourselves off into unhelpful interpretations, it would be something like focus on your own mind. Yeah. Take responsibility for that, for working with that. Yeah. Know that that's actually the root cause of the suffering, and that's what we can do something about fantastically. You know, a lot of outside things, okay, we can have some influence on it, but very often we can't change it. Our own mind, we can work with over time. So it's not even that ego is the problem. Yeah. People talk about, oh, it's my ego, because we won't even find that. Yeah. It's the clinging. It's the misinterpretation of the situation. It's this sense of me that sort of continues over time. And there's usually this sense of continuing over time unchanged. And that constant reference back to that, that's the issue. So whenever we are suffering, if we're practicing this precept, it's like whenever there's a sense of suffering, it becomes a trigger for thinking, there must be, for this suffering to be happening, there must be a story that I'm telling myself and emotions based on that are wrong, that aren't how things are. So the suffering becomes another trigger, another catalyst for a Dharma exploration. Yeah. In order to feel like this, what do I have to be telling myself and about life? Yeah. How does my mind have to be operating? Yeah. For me to have created this tension in my shoulders, what is it that who is it that I'm defending myself against? Yeah. So we explore and explore. And then maybe the shoulders come down a few inches. That's better. So you get the idea? Yeah. So it's let's focus on the central issue, which is the one that we can most directly influence. So it's not about blaming them, although sometimes someone else or some other people may be responsible for things. It's not about blaming me. That's not the answer either. This whole thing of who is to blame, me or them, let's just put all that aside. But the issue is our misinterpretation of our experience and how we build on that. That sense of this me that's sort of at the center of everything. I sometimes borrow an illustration from Rigzin Shikpo, who's an English Dzogchen teacher. And he talks about there's an empty stage, and you have different actors going across it. And there's a director's chair in front of the stage. And so an actor comes on and they start to be or not to be. That is the question, whether it is noble in the mind. And they go off and the next actor comes on and goes, whatever. A horse, my kingdom for a horse. Okay, next. And it seems like there's somebody in the director's chair kind of going, no, next, sorry, no, don't call us, we'll call it, etc. But when we explore the person in the director's chair, what we discover is that the director is another actor. It's just kind of a series of actors who are going and sitting in the director's chair. So it feels like there's a sense of me right in the center of things, but when we really explore that, there's me who has the thoughts, me who has the emotions. But when we go into that, it seems like that me is just another collection of thoughts and emotions. And there's some awareness there. It's like we explore the 5 skandhas and we find that there isn't anyone who owns the 5 skandhas. There isn't anyone who has those 5 skandhas. Everything which feels like it is the owner of the 5 skandhas is a manifestation of the 5 skandhas, just as the person in the director's chair is actually just another actor in this sort of stream of people passing. So it's that fixing of things and creating a fixed sense of a self out of the flow of experience, which then also makes us feel separate from everybody else. Because as soon as you have me, as soon as you have self, you have other immediately. So then there's a sense of separation. Out of that, you have the suffering, that sort of basic creation of a sense of tension between me and everything else, which is basic dukkha. And in response to that, we produce ways of trying to alleviate that tension, which are craving and aversion. And that all builds and gets more and more complex. And we have the whole shooting match, the whole mess. Yeah. So that's what we need to focus on. Whenever there's suffering, somehow we're producing that process. And it's another opportunity to look at, well, how am I doing that now? Which helps to dismantle it. Okay, you get the idea. Yeah. So, yeah, again, suffering becomes a catalyst for Dharma practice. Okay, yeah, that's enough for now. So, yeah, if there are, no, let's meditate. Yeah, if you have questions, by all means, drop me a line. before we do meditate, though, I'd just like to take a moment just to remind you that yeah, we're doing this retreat. I'm not at Adhisthana, but it's being done effectively from Adhisthana. And Adhisthana last year, I don't know how much money it lost, but usually it runs based on holding large events, you know, like large order weekends and large retreats. And so none of those have happened. And lockdown in the UK has carried on into this year. And yeah, it's not clear, you know, when we'll get to the point where Adhisthana will be able to run events in its usual way. So, and it just provides so much to the order and movement as a central place, as a way of people coming together. A lot of our people who do so much for the order are based there. Yeah, this retreat wouldn't happen in this way without them. So yeah, whatever we can do to help and support them, let's really do it. I know there would some with big things like Adhisthana, you think, again, we have the sense, well, they're just there and they'll be there forever, but they won't be there forever unless we put the conditions in place. So please do what you can. Okay, so let's finish with some meditation. So once we're settled in meditation, taking awareness down to the ground. Putting down roots of awareness and energy into the earth. and letting the body grow up like some great tree. Letting the body fill with kindly awareness. All the feelings and sensations, all arising within a field of kindness, all known, clearly experienced. See if we can relax any sense of bringing kindly awareness to the sensations. So the feelings and sensations are a bit like waves in a sea of kindly awareness. The feelings and sensations are themselves kindly awareness. Now let's be particularly aware of the sensations of the breathing. So the aware feelings and sensations of the breathing. Let's just see if we can notice very gently, very subtly, any sense of me, the meditator, me, the one who's aware of the sensation. Where are they? What are they made up of? Are there thoughts? Are there awareness? This sense of me doing the practice. And we just relax back into the breathing. And again, there could be a subtle looking for any sense of me, the meditator. Me, the watcher. What's that made up of? Is it standing back from the flow of experience? Or is it another manifestation of it? And again, relaxing back into the flow of the breathing. Now relaxing, nothing in particular to do. And at the end of the meditation, just open heart and open hands. And the benefits go everywhere, to everyone. Okay, thank you for that. That's it for another session. Very good to see you all. Have a very good time until we meet again.